Do you think you realised the pressure you were under then, or was it something that you looked back on and thought?
No. Oh no, I realized it then. Yeah, I realized it then. But you know, all artists are nervous before they sing. Some more than others, but I don't know anyone, even Pavarotti himself, all the great singers. I had, you know, one of the incredible advantages I had being able to work with and travel with Luciano was that I had a bird's eye view of, eagle eye view of the profession at the highest level, seeing how things worked in major opera companies, seeing great artists perform from close up. I mean, I was really, my unique vantage point was that I started at the top, in a sense, from what I was able to see of the business. And that gave me a lot of information, even about television, film, you know, the life of an opera singer on the road, because if you are an opera singer, it is a life choice. And I think a lot of young singers should ask themselves, are they ready to make that kind of lives for themselves? Are they ready to give up any sense of real normalcy? Because, you know, especially for women, if you want to have children, how do you handle a career and children in a career where you're basically going to be moving around? I remember when my own son, I have one child, was little, I would take him with me, but only until he had to go to school. After 6 years old, it was very difficult for me to take him out of school to come with me, you know?
You have sung in most, if not all, of the major houses in the world, and also in a wide range of roles. What would you say, from, you know, starting off with Mimi was fantastic. Is that your favourite role, or what would you say has been most rewarding, enjoyable to sing, or even most challenging?
First of all, I do love Mozart, and in my career I started off singing Zerlina, and then I moved on to sing Donna Elvira, and I've sung Pamina, I've sung Zerlina, Donna Elvira, I've sung the Countess in the Marriage of Figaro, I've sung in Idomeneo, I sang Zaida in the Mozart opera Zaida, which was one of the hardest roles I've ever sung in my life. That was a killer role, and I learned it in a very short time, like 2 weeks. That was one of the hardest things I ever did. But I sang it at La Fenice. My favorite role was Tosca, but Tosca was kind of something that started out in an interesting way. I've always loved the character of Tosca, the personaggio, and I decided to start studying Tosca because I felt it was good in my voice. And a lot of people were dubious at first. They said, I don't know if that's for your voice. And I felt it, so I thought, well, I'm just going to learn this role, and I don't care if I ever sing it on the stage or not. I want to know this whole role. And I learned the role, and as I sang it, everyone said, hey, you know, this sounds good. This is good. So I went for my very first audition as Tosca, and they gave me the role. So I got to debut it. And to me, that my first performance of Tosca, which I wanted more than anything. I did it myself. Nobody believed that I would be doing it. And that was the greatest night of my career for me. It was more important to me than singing with Pavarotti at Madison Square Garden.
I was going to say that was one of you.
You know, I mean, to me that was something that I did all by myself. And I remember, it wasn't my first performance of Tosca, but it was a production of Tosca that I did to reopen a theater that had been closed for 20 years. And the Italian television RAI made a big deal about, you know, them reopening this theater, and they filmed my Visitate, and I was in my hotel and the phone rang, and it was Luciano, and he said, "Oh, baby, you sound great," and, you know, and I was like, it's like, wow.
How old were you when you did your first Tosca? Because, you know, that's
wait a minute,
a role that, you know, in terms of the development of the voice and maturity of the voice.
That's a good question to ask, Teresa. It was 96, so I was 40 years old.
So really the ideal
It was the right time.
To
see, that
take
gets
on
back
that
to what I was
repertoire.
saying, is that, you know, you can't we all dream of singing certain roles, but you have to know what roles are right for you at what stage of your career. You know, I sang my first Donna Elvira after I'd already sung Zerlina 10 years later, you know. I mean, you can't go for the big stuff right away. I have young singers come to me. I had somebody come to me the other day, and she decided she wanted to be a mezzo-soprano because she felt more comfortable in her first octave. And I said, okay. And we went through a few arias, and she had these gorgeous high notes, effortless. And I said to her, why would you want to become a mezzo just because you're more comfortable? I mean, we all have to do things out of our comfort zone. But why would you want to give up what you have so naturally? You know? Why bring your voice down? Your voice is beautiful up. Work up. Don't work down. Sometimes when you work your first octave or a little bit lower, it actually improves your high notes because you become more rooted. You become more, your support is better.
Yeah, you're more grounded.
You're more grounded. Your voice is more grounded. And that gives you the advantage when you go up afterwards. But, you know, these are other things, too. You know, this woman, if she continues to work her voice and force it in a lower register, not only will she lose her high notes, which were beautiful, but, you know, she'll become something that's against her own vocal nature. So you really have to understand your vocal nature. You can start out with one kind of voice, and it can mature and become heavier or darker or whatever. But when you're at a young age, and when I say young, I mean 30, you can't really... you know, you have to be a little bit out of your comfort zone, but that could be in terms of building more strength on your high notes. Later on in life, when you're 50, 55, 60 or whatever, then if your voice is more comfortable in the lower range and you feel like, you know, you don't want to kill yourself on your high notes anymore, that's a different story.
Well, hopefully she took your advice, but I mean, I always have singers come to me. I say if I had £1 for every singer that had come to me saying they were a dramatic soprano, I could have retired years ago.
Yeah, it's
and that's what you're talking about, being true to your voice.
Yeah, true to your voice. I mean, one can start out with a lighter voice and it can get heavier because, as we said earlier, you know, your body is growing, maturing, evolving.
Well, Gwyneth Jones was someone like that too.
It's interesting that you mentioned her. She was the best Tosca I ever saw.
Wow!
And that was not her repertoire.
No, she was the best Aida. I think I've seen videos of her Aida when she was younger.
I thought she was an amazing Tosca,
Wow.
and I was tough with Toscas, you know, because I wanted to sing that role so badly. So there was no Tosca that I thought, you know.
What about Zinka Milanov, who was a famous Tosca?
I never saw her sing. I mean, you know, I'm old, but she was really before
me. She was. I think when Corelli made his Franco Corelli made his debut in Tosca at the Garden, I think she was already an older lady then. But
yes, I've heard about her. And I've heard her recordings, you know. Nowadays, of course, the whole landscape of the performing arts has changed so much because of technology, because of video, and this is also important for young singers today. You know, in our day, my day at least, you know, you got out of school, and there was such a gap between the conservatory and the professional life. There was no bridge whatsoever. So you basically got out of school and you didn't know what was going to happen next, you know. Nowadays, there are so many ways that young artists can put themselves out there, can be seen, can find management. But when I got out of Juilliard, you know, there were 3 or 4 big management companies, and if you didn't get in with one of those agents, you know, you thought, oh my God, I'm never going to get work. And those important agents had rosters that were, you know, from here to across that field over there, you know, the rosters were endless. And, you know, just being on a roster didn't mean that you would find work. Nowadays, there's so many other things happening to allow young singers not only to be seen, but also to do workshops and do things that are important, like the one you're doing. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Giving people a chance to work on their artistry, work on us in a stage situation, because in the end, why are we doing all this? Because we want to get out on the stage and sing. But, you know, getting out on a stage and sing requires certain skills that, you know, you don't necessarily learn in conservatory. You have to learn through experience.
I found that when I was lucky enough to join my first company, then it was really being on stage, actually doing it, watching the older singers and the, you know, singers coming in. I mean, that was, you can't beat that kind of training.
You can't beat, the stage is the greatest teacher. Experience in
Exactly.
all realms of life is the greatest teacher.
So going back to is there any role that you haven't done that you perhaps wished you had, or?
Well, there are a lot of roles I would have loved to have done. Right now, well, as soprano roles, I really would have killed to have done a Manon Lescaut. That was, I would have loved to have done that role because I love the music so much, and I used to use the aria in Quelle trine morbide, anche Sola perduta e abbandonata in my auditions.
One of my favorite operas.
Oh, it's wonderful. So I'm sorry I didn't get to do that, but for the past few years, I have been studying as a mezzo-soprano. I go to a voice lesson every week.
Wow, good.
I wanted to keep my voice healthy. You know, when you don't work out, when you don't use your voice, you don't sing for a while, you know, you lose the musculatura. So to me, it's always been very important to keep my voice limber, and I work at it. I work twice a week, once with a coach, and once with a voice teacher. And over the past 3 years, we've been working very much on the mezzo repertoire, which is what I've, just like that young woman that came to me last week, you know, I always was a secret mezzo, but through my career I did sing roles, Zwischenfach is what they say in German, because my first octave was always strong, dark, it had a dark timbre, and it was comfortable. And of course with age, you know, that has been reinforced. So now I would kill to sing an omneris. So if anybody's out there and can offer me an omneris, I'm ready.